Penalty shootouts are the most dramatic way to win or lose a football match. Football is littered throughout its history with dramatic, memorable shootouts that we can all probably remember, such as World Cups and domestic cup finals, European Cup finals, and the list goes on and on. But if you're shooting a penalty shootout as a photographer, what do you need to do to make sure that you convey all that drama and emotion into your photographs? Of course, as photographers, it is our job to tell the story of what has happened on the pitch in the match that we've just watched. And if that game goes to penalty shootout, it's likely that something fairly important was riding on it. Therefore, making sure that you capture all that drama, all that passion and emotion, the heartbreak, the excitement and happiness and the joy, capturing all that in your images is really important. And over the years, I've been fortunate enough to photograph loads of penalty shootouts, actually. I'm probably, 9 years into photographing professional football here in England. I wouldn't say that I've got a go-to method for doing it. I'm still not entirely happy what the best approach is for this. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my experiences and show you some of my examples of shooting penalty shootouts down the years, some of the scenarios I've faced, and what I think the best or worst approach may be. But as I said, I'm still not 100% decided. So what I'd love is in the comments or on social media, however you see fit, get in touch and let me know how you shoot a penalty shootout. Now, with all that said, I'm going to jump straight in with my different areas to consider when photographing penalty shootouts. Before I start, let's just quickly touch on the settings that you might use for this. Now, I've done quite a few videos on sports photography settings, camera settings for beginners and all this kind of thing. If you're shooting a penalty shootout, as far as the action is concerned, I wouldn't kind of stray from the settings that you've been using for the rest of the game. So you're looking for a nice high shutter speed, in my opinion, at least 1/1000th of a second. Aperture as wide open as you can, so that's a lower f number, f2.8 if you can, and then whatever ISO needs to be. That will be my advice. So keep the settings you've shot the rest of the match with. And with that being said, let's jump into the rest of the video. And first of all, I want to talk about your shooting position. Now, if you photograph predominantly for a specific club or team like I do, then your shooting position might change, or you might have a requirement to actually get as much as possible. And by that, I mean, when I've shot penalty shootouts previously, I need to get, if the goalkeeper makes a save that wins the game, I really need to have that as best as possible. I also need to have a great shot of the winning penalty should we win that game. If you're shooting for an agency, normally when I've done it, I'd probably stay focused on the striker, the guy scoring a goal. But that said, there's all sorts of different things to consider with that. Now, in terms of position, I will usually prefer, speaking solely as a kind of my opinion, to keep kind of the position I like to shoot games into, that is behind the goal and over to one side. Now, that side is normally nearer to the corner flag, but for penalty shootouts, what's often good, if you want to get the kicker coming towards you, is just come a little bit more central, so you get more of the shot of that player as they come in to strike the ball and the process of them kicking that ball. One thing to remember as well, or to keep in mind really, and you'll never be able to eradicate this totally unless you're really lucky with who's taking the penalties, but when players come in shape to take a penalty, if you're on the right-hand side of the goal, so if the goal is here on your left, and you're to the right, if you're facing in on an angle like that, if you imagine the guy striking the ball, you're over to his or hers left, okay? So if he's right-footed or she's right-footed, when they take that kick, often the shape of the body they use, if you're over there, the shape of the body might actually cut off some of either the face as they're striking the ball, or you might get an arm come up in the way. So similarly, if you're the other side and the penalty taker is left-footed, again, that body shape is going to change. So ideally, if you're shooting a team where you know most of those players are right-footed, it might be better to sit on the other side of the goal so that their body is opened up as they strike the ball. It's not a big thing, but if it's a shootout where for some reason you're struggling to get the image you want, or maybe you just want to get the best possible shot of them striking the ball with the face and the body all kind of opened out towards you, that is certainly something to bear in mind. Now, when I've said before about shooting for the club I photograph for, I did have one shootout the other year when in the COVID season when all the stadiums were shut to fans, where it was really easy actually to move around. And so when Tranmere were taking a penalty, so my team were taking a penalty, I could get that position we've just spoke about behind the goal, off to the side a little bit. And then when our goalkeeper was set to try and save a penalty, I was able to come around the side of the pitch and kind of get a nice side on angle so you could get a nice shot of the keeper saving the ball. And I've tried to drop a couple of those in here. Now, that's not always going to be possible. In fact, more often than not, you won't probably be able to change position. Certainly if you're shooting at a professional level, maybe kind of the grassroots and amateur, semi-pro level, you will have a little bit more movement or be able to do a little bit more movement and change your position up. So that then leads me to, if you're not shooting behind the goal and you've got to stay put, you're going to be shooting from the side probably. Now, shooting from the side for penalties is good for the goalkeeper if you want to get that keeper saving the ball. But I experimented around a little bit earlier this season. And I'm always trying to be quite honest on this channel. When I try things that don't work, I'll share them with you. And when I try things that do work, equally, I will share those. A shootout I had maybe 2 months ago, if that, I decided to try, because I was on the side and quite a way away, I decided to try and on my telephoto lens, my 70-200, take that out to 70mm, focus it as wide as possible, and try and get the shooter and the goalkeeper all in the same shot. And to be honest, it didn't work. The light was rubbish as well, so the photo looked absolutely rubbish in my opinion. However, I do think there's some experimenting to have it. If you've got the right focal length, maybe a 50mm might make it easier. Or if you can maybe focus in on the ball before the penalty is struck, flip autofocus off so you know you've roughly got where the kicker is going to be when they strike it. Then maybe pivot a little bit towards the goal where you can get everything in shot a bit more centrally. That may work. I didn't do that when I shot this game when I was experimenting. So right now, unless you just want the goalkeeper saving the ball, I probably wouldn't personally pick to shoot from the side. Number 2 is beware of the teams that are left on the halfway line. So when a penalty shootout takes place in football or soccer, as you guys in the US will refer to it as, both teams will basically line up along the halfway line with one of the match officials, and each penalty taker will be called to take their penalty when the time comes. Now, that makes for some quite nice backdrops. If you're behind the goal, you can get a nice face-on shot of them all. Normally, a lot of teams will have their arms around each other, kind of showing that team spirit. And the emotions are brilliant because if one of their players scores, you might get a little bit of joy. I won't say it was anything more than a little bit of joy. And if a penalty is saved or missed, they might, show some disappointment as well. When a penalty shootout ends, however, you'll get some great shots, especially if it's a really big game, like a big cup final or a big cup semi-final or a playoff game. When a certain team wins, what you'll often get is the team flooding down the pitch, arms aloft, all sprinting to get to the guy or the girl who's just either scored the winning penalty or the goalkeeper who has saved the winning penalty. So be aware of the players on the halfway line, both during the shootout and also when the shootout concludes, and you get both the anguish and the celebration of the two teams. And just on that point as well, when the shootouts end, if the goalkeeper has saved the winning shot or saved the shot that turns out to be the winning save, what they'll often do immediately after is run around with their arms aloft, and sometimes they'll run back to their teammates who are, as we said, rushing towards them. Other times they'll go off to the side and the fans, they might do a knee slide or whatever. So when you're shooting a penalty shootout, just be aware there's a few different ways the ending can go. And that's why I'd always still have my 70-200 telephoto lens with me, because it does give you that little bit of versatility and flexibility depending on where things happen and what transpires immediately after the shootout. My next tip or question is, should you try a wide angle lens? Now, I spoke before about when I was shooting from the side, I tried to go wide with a 70mm telephoto, which isn't wide, but if you're far enough back, kind of gives a wider picture. And it didn't really work. However, if you're tighter into the goal, it might be quite a nice way to experiment, actually, is to get quite tight to the goal if you're allowed to do so, and use a wide angle to get more of the goal and the goalkeeper from behind, but also the player running in to strike the ball. Also, if you're shooting from the side, maybe you could use a wide angle. I'm not sure. I've not yet personally used a proper wide angle for a penalty shootout. But it's one to consider. And again, if you get those celebrations at the end and the players come close to you, as we've seen during football matches, when you get a celebration that comes really close, if you've got a spare body with a wide angle on, it can be really helpful just to give you that little bit of flexibility to get more shots when those opportunities occur. So I've already talked a little bit about those initial celebration shots, both the joy and also the disappointment side of things of the penalty taker, the goalkeeper and the teams coming down towards you to celebrate at full time. However, something else I want to just point out as well, or advise you keep in mind, is that penalty shootouts, as we've said, so much often rides on them that people are really happy or really gutted if they win or lose. So beyond the players on the pitch, be aware of what's happening around you. So the supporters, for example, are likely to be some great shots of exuberant celebrations, and also on the losing side, if it's a really big game, you'll get fans maybe in tears, and if they've had any face paint or anything on the game, you get those lovely shots of tears maybe rubbing with the face paint and making a mess. But they make for really good shots. Similarly, always be aware of what's happening in the dugout, so the benches where the substitutes and the coaching staff and the managers are. Because often whatever happens in the shootout, the two dugouts will have a reaction that's also worth capturing as well. And that's it, quite a short video. The main aim, I guess, of this is I want to hear your thoughts on how you shoot penalty shootouts. If you go on Getty Images or you go on Google Images and type in football penalty shootout, there are so many images, many of them iconic, others just run-of-the-mill or stock photos, because there's so many different ways you can approach this. Some photographers, certainly during World Cups, when shooting positions at the pitch level or at a premium, will go up high in the stand and use a massive telephoto to get down to the pitch. And that actually gives a lovely kind of higher angle, which I don't normally like in photography, but it can work for penalties, kind of looking down on the player. So there's so many ways you can approach photographing penalty shootouts. Let me know in the comments below what method you prefer and what your experiences have been. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if so, I will see you on the next one.